On today's World Insight, China, an eager partner of the United Nations in fixing global challenges, has conveyed in a one-on-one exclusive interview with the UN General Assembly President, Csaba Kőrösi.
The big data, the real-time picture, and a device of how we plan our future steps will help us greatly.
Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The United Nations General Assembly President, Csaba Kőrösi, is visiting China this week. The UN is the core mechanism, indeed the key platform for multilateralism in fixing global concerns. With a web of challenges ranging from COVID-19 pandemic to economic recovery, the world needs joint efforts to take them on. As a founding UN member and a permanent member of the UN Security Council, China has always been a strong backer of the United Nations, and it has greatly contributed to global efforts to achieve sustainable development goals. For more, I have an in-depth interview with no other than the UN General Assembly President, Csaba Kőrösi. Take a listen. President Kőrösi, what a pleasure to see you.
Ms. Wei, the pleasure is always mine. I heard so much about you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words. But your trip to China actually is very encouraging. It's actually during the Spring Festival season, and you're already planning for the important work of the United Nations General Assembly with your Chinese colleagues. Tell me more about what you have learned, what your observations are after intense interactions with your Chinese counterparts.
Ms. Wei, I came here to find partners, and in fact I found allies. It is even more than what I hoped for. The world is in deep crisis. The United Nations is mirroring the status of affairs in the world, and the United Nations is looking for solutions. So our solutions are as complex as the crisis out in the world. Our solutions are as complex and as integrated. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to change the world. We are trying to go for transformation. And what I found here, with the government of China, with scientists, very well prepared, not only professionally, but very well prepared mentally and emotionally. They are looking into the future, and that was very refreshing.
Several focus of your trip this time. One is sustainable development, certainly, the SDGs related to the UN agenda. The other, of course, is the economics of water, which is close to your heart, and the cooperation with scientists, how to make sure science will be nurtured as one of the key factors when decision makers are making important decisions. Now, tell me more about, on these three branches, what have you found out? Let's say water first.
For the viewers, we are in the middle of the water crisis. It is not a future phenomena. It is happening as we speak. You can look at what happened in Pakistan, in California, in Europe, in the Sahel. Different features of the water crisis, the too much water, too little water, or polluted water, actually threatening lives, livelihoods, and futures of communities, threatening complete countries. If we don't do something very serious, very, very transformative, then I'm afraid the future will bring many, many big challenges. So what needs to be done? We have to design step change. We have to find game changers. We have to find the right technologies. We have to find the right partners. We have to create the right cooperation and build the right system of how we are going to implement our decisions, and bringing science as a supporting tool. That's exactly what I discussed with the members of the government of China and with the Chinese scientists. So far, the best ever information and best ever technology I was shown. Very encouraging.
You are making your trip to Henan, if I understand, and also going to see some projects, water projects China did before, diverting water from the south to the northern part of China. Why is this important to you? How do you see these practices, for example, from members countries like China, can be of service reference to the other developing and emerging economies?
The issue China is trying to address is huge. You have almost 20% of the global population, but you have only 8% or even less of the global water resources. You are going to have the largest economy in the world very soon with a very small amount of water. So you have to find the ways how your water efficiency should be the best in the world. And since you have a vast territory, in some parts of your territory you have just enough water, in some other parts you are thirsty, you need more water. And the history of China shows that those leaders who invested in the good water management infrastructure, they became the real historic leaders. I see the challenge in front of China, and I'm going to see the solutions. I'm really looking forward. How does it work? Earlier, many nations tried to conquer nature. All of them failed. Nature is always fighting back. In the past big projects, big water projects, the Chinese emperors used to do was much smarter. They tried to use the power of nature to serve the people, and not to serve not to take the people serving the fight against nature. So I'm very much looking forward to understand a little bit more about this project. Why is it important? Maybe not everybody will have the resources to build such big projects as you do, but the challenge is there. About 40% of the world by 2040 will be lacking water to a very large extent. The difference between the water availability and water demand will be more than 40%. If we cannot solve it, it means that 40% of humanity will suffer immensely. Now we'll see where and how China can go.
You met with scientists from the International Research Center for Big Data for Sustainable Development Goals. I know that is one of the organizations established in China to support the SDGs, particularly after the Chinese President Xi Jinping made a speech at the UN General Assembly. I know you remember that very well, but sir, tell me more about how will these big data be able to be shared with everybody and for the common benefits of the developing and the emerging economies particularly?
Let us spend a sentence first. Why big data?
Okay.
Why we need so much data and so precise data? We are talking about a very complicated transformatory process. We need to think about our human beings, our human societies, our economies, and our environment. We need to change all in order to make sure that there will be a good future for our communities. When you start changing it, you have 17 goals. You refer to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And when we created the SDGs 7 years ago, it was a vision for the future. How we would like to see this world in 15 years' time, how we would like to see ourselves in that world. But how to make the journey, that's a big issue. And how to make sure that we understand where we are and how we are progressing on the road. You need a huge amount of data. And not only the quantity of data that counts, how you integrate the data. How you integrate the data from climate, from water, from food, from energy production, and make conclusions for the human beings. That is a huge engineering and huge scientific challenge. That is exactly what your people are doing here. What you achieved here in the International Center for Big Data for Sustainable Development, when I saw it, I said, this is my old dream coming true. When we designed the SDGs, we felt that there will be a leapfrogging in science. There will be a leapfrogging in technology, but it still didn't exist 7 years ago. I came here and I saw that the groundwork has been done. It is marvelous, not only because we can have very good information where we are, we can provide very good information for those countries who may not have these institutions like you have, who may not have this scientific background what you have here. It is something that is based on science, scientific evidence, and it is designed for multilateral cooperation.
Mr. President, there were earlier discussions about what is driving the world forward. We have seen the globalization, for example, the globalization that we understand that has been pretty much been promoted and nurtured by people exchanges and also trade as well. But then some suggest that now we are a world whose order is mainly driven by politics, some suggest. So how do you see, after talking to scientists, I know you also have been very keen in putting science front and center as reference for making decisions. So what is really driving our world? I'm very curious about this after you explained your experience during your trip here.
I think we are in a new chapter of history. And unfortunately, it is a very sad starting. Somehow, something happened to us during the COVID crisis. We experienced many parallel crises piling up, reinforcing each other, some of them of old geopolitical nature. The geopolitical divide in the world is deepening. On the other hand, our non-sustainable way of development created a lot of challenges, and they started emerging and reinforcing each other. Two avalanches came to us and created a new situation. This new era of history still has no name, but we know how dangerous it can be. All nations did experience in the last 2 years. It brought down within weeks complete economies, labor markets, trade relationship, supply chains. It brought down budgets. It created 76 countries' debts, sovereign debts, close to the level of collapse. So it's a new era. How you design in a complex, very new era with full of challenges, way out. First of all, you have to come together. We all have to come together. The second, we need to base our decisions on scientific evidence. We cannot solve the situation through ideological debate. We cannot solve this situation through political grandstanding. But if we base our decisions on scientific evidence, at least we are in the same boat. We understand where we are. Then, of course, we need to discuss who brings what into the common table, whose responsibility, to what extent is the common situation or the future situation. But at least we can see the solution, and now we see the solution. We have goals, we see the direction, we see some technologies, I see the willingness, so let's go ahead.
It is a very concise but very precise description you just gave, Mr. President. So we see member countries of the United Nations have been making their contributions to the overall transition period, as you mentioned, sir. Different member countries provide inspirations, ideas. We also see, for example, China proposed a community of shared future or common destiny. Also, for example, to implement the SDGs, the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative to go with it. How do you see these ideas coming from member country like China? How much will they provide impetus and inspiration for cooperation among all the member states of the United Nations? For example, at the General Assembly.
Ms. Wright, we have 193 countries in the UN and the General Assembly with very, very different capabilities. Some of them are very small countries. Some of them are as small as one of your villages. Obviously, these countries may have different institutional backgrounds, may have different scientific backgrounds. Some others may have very more advanced capabilities. So those countries who are powerful, scientifically advanced, well-governed, those countries have the best possibility to have a leadership role, and leadership also means responsibility. Where the big and well-equipped countries would go will determine the way the world will go. So the influence of China in this field is as big as that of the United States. These two big actors will have a huge impact on the future way the humanity will develop. And it will impact very much the smaller nations. What I saw today and what I had the opportunity to listen to when I talked to your leaders, I think the willingness is there.
You're watching World Insight. Coming up, more highlights of my in-depth interview, one-on-one with UN General Assembly President Casaba Quarashi on China's role in pursuing solutions to global crisis. Stay tuned.
The big data, the real-time picture, and a device of how we plan our future steps will help us greatly.
The world is changing fast, taking all our lives with it. But we can change it too, by seeking answers to problems through discussions and debates. On World Insight, I ask direct questions to real people in the know, seek genuine answers, but respect diverse perspectives. Our live global debates tackle the most critical issues head-on. World Insight with Tian Wei go beyond the headlines.
Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The role of the United Nations in tackling global challenges today couldn't be more obvious. How important for UN member states focusing on building solutions together. How crucial are real actions. My interview with UN General Assembly President continues. You met already with the State Councilor, Wang Yi. You also met with the Foreign Minister, Mr. Qin Gang, who was actually the former ambassador to the US, by the way. So what about those explanations they give to you to explain these ideas? How will it be able to be implemented? And how will it eventually really contribute to the SDGs?
I understood from their statements that China is doing this transformation, implementing SDGs, not necessarily because someone has wrote those paragraphs. Actually, I was among those who created the SDGs.
Congratulations, by the way. Those ideas ingrained in the world's population's hearts.
There were many colleagues and many diplomats, scientists, and other actors who actually worked together many years ago. But the Chinese leadership understood that it is in their interest, because if they advance on the implementations, it means a much better living quality for the people of China and much better competitiveness of the Chinese economy and Chinese science. The third, the biggest country in the world. The biggest country in the world is influencing the rest of the world. It makes a difference. What direction are we going to influence the rest of the world? If China is among those who can lead the transformation, then probably the content of the transformation will be very similar what you can do here back at home.
Trust is something, Mr. President, you advocated at the very first day of your job as the General Assembly President. I know you've been doing that through fireside chat and doing that through off-the-record discussions and even, shall I say, heated debates among.
You are very well informed, Ms. Wei.
I read a little. But I know that trust is crucial here, both between China and the United Nations, and also members of the United Nations. So on this issue, how were you discussing with your Chinese counterpart at this time? How will earlier the China proposed ideas and implementation of those ideas be able to support trust?
Trust is in short supply in the world. The division among member states, among countries in the world is deep. Mistrust is there. So it was one of the reasons I had to concentrate much efforts of trying to create common ground among member states. How you can rebuild trust. You had to find common causes. What is the best common interest of the humanity in this world? Survival, first. Prosperity, second. And if you put together survival, prosperity, or with other words, crisis management and transformation, all together it gives you sustainable development. Therefore, it is a very pivotal part of my program, and I'm trying to serve member states in a way that will help everybody. Despite ideological differences, despite geopolitical divide, we all together want to survive. We all together want to make sure that your children, my children, will have a chance.
About how the world is running. We have seen what some call lack of multilateralism. We have also seen what some called so-called hegemony, using a big word. We also see the collapse of a trust system and further fragmentation, getting ever more serious, it seems. So how do you see using one thread be able to at least be the start of the change?
It is all true, what you said, Ms. Wei. It is part of reality. Therefore, when I introduced my motto and program to the member states, it sounded that let's seek solutions through solidarity, sustainability, and science. Solutions because we have so many goals, good goals, noble goals, forward-looking goals, but we are much weaker in the implementation. So let's focus on action. Let's focus on what are we going to do? How are we going to change this world, in this situation?
So what are we going to do? I mean, for the year 2023, that's your year as the President of the General Assembly. You're already up and running early in the year, going to India, going to China now, and earlier you were at the COP27, COP15, getting all these informations. What are we going to do? Eventually, you're going to report next week to the member countries of the United Nations on science and future development of the United Nations.
Indeed.
So tell me more about what are we going to do?
Indeed, because these member states you referred to are now starting 16 negotiating processes in the General Assembly, parallel. It has never happened before.
Like what?
How are we going to fix the SDGs?
Okay.
How are we going to fix the water crisis? What shall we do with disaster risk reduction? What are we going to offer for the next generations, compact and youth? How are we going to deal with the digital revolution, digital compact? What are the lessons learned? How are we going to change our systems' behavior on 3 related health issues? Pandemic, TB, universal health coverage. Similarly, 16 these processes will give us an image of the future.
Is there a deadline?
Yes, there is. In September 2023, there will be a summit meeting, or to be quite precise, 9 summit meetings within 10 days in New York. It might be too much, a little bit too much. But it is an extraordinary time with extraordinary tasks. If we do it right, all the negotiating processes, all the commitments, all the scientific backup, all the systems of implementation, then we are going to have a vision, what should be achieved, a commitment that we are all on board. We are going to have a clear set of tasks, what to be done, and we are going to have a clear vision of how are we going to finance it. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I hope I'm not alone.
Everything starts from the good dreams, I hope.
And I hope there are many other dreamers.
What do you expect China's role to be?
A leadership role.
Yeah. Like what kind of leadership role? Describe to us, especially after your interactions here.
We just spoke about the voter conference, which will be the first full-fledged UN voter conference since 1977. It is time to change history. There will be 5 big issues to be discussed, and for each of the 5 big issues, there were countries requested to take the lead. One of them will be co-led by China and the European Union. If these 2 big centers come together, they will lead the world.
And as one of those very well-known Chinese martial art artists said, be like water, my friend. I think it's Bruce Lee who said that about life, how we make sure we adjust to the changes just like water, but always be true to our heart, the water.
He was right, but let me also quote another one from a neighboring country, Mahatma Gandhi, who said, be the change yourself, what you would like to see in the world.
Final question. How dangerous it is if we are not focusing on the real issues, many of those you have already mentioned and dear to your heart, but focus only on rhetoric wars.
History will not forgive us, and our children will not forgive us. We don't have that chance. We cannot afford that.
Mr. President, what a pleasure, and thank you so much for sharing your time out of your busy schedule here traveling in China.
Ms. Wei, thank you very much for having me. It has been a real pleasure of sharing some mutual ideas with you.
Thank you, sir. And that's my in-depth interview with the President of UN General Assembly. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.